Greetings. Welcome to Part 5 of Teaching Geography with ArcGIS Online. Joseph Kursky here with you, geographer and education manager at the Esri Education team. This series stemmed from a presentation that I gave at the Geographical Association Conference in April 2012 in Manchester. What I did in the first 3 parts of this presentation is made a case, I hope, for how and why GIS, specifically ArcGIS Online, can be used to teach geography. In the 4th part, we explored one specific problem, looking at birth rate, life expectancy, and growth percentages in different countries around the world over time from 1960 to the present. In this presentation, or actually what I hope to do is a workshop format that you can use to apply to your own classroom settings, is let's take a look at another set of data. We've looked at world and global data in the last session. This session, let's look at some data specifically in the UK. And this data has to do with population. It's the deprivation rate is what we're going to look at. Okay, so I'm going to arcgis.com. Right up here in the search window, I'm going to type in GA conference because my colleague put this particular data set up for the GA conference. I'm going to open it up in the ArcGIS Online map viewer. And what it is, it's the top and bottom 5% 2010 ranking from the National Statistics Agency looking at deprivation, poverty rates around the country. The most and the least deprived neighborhoods, enumeration districts, actually super output areas in terms of the census. Now, one of the things that you can do with a GIS is you can use these maps to really dig into the whys of where. So taking a look at the country right now, this is just for England, okay? But if I zoom out a bit, there's a lot of little specks around here. I'm going to change the base map right now to something called a light gray canvas. Because what I want to do is I want to be able to look at, let's take a look at the legend here. Okay, this is the top and bottom. These are the 5% most deprived is in this color. And in this color is the 5% least deprived. So we're looking at both ends of the extreme here. What kinds of patterns can we see at this level? I can see that up north here, I actually have a little bit of a higher instance of the deprivation being the most deprived. Now, we can have a discussion with the students. What variables go into that label, most deprived, least deprived? And also, how was the census data collected? Can we trust it? How recent is it? Does everybody get reported in the census? Do certain population segments get missed more frequently? In other words, get them to really dig into the data set itself and ask questions of the data. Now, the data is imperfect, right? It's not perfect, but it's very useful. It's very useful to look at patterns that lead to how cities grew over time, what the unemployment was like, how does that contribute to poverty rates, and so on. That's a discussion that you can have, is what's happened in the past with the Industrial Revolution and the northern cities and their industrial base and how they're reinventing themselves and so on. Also, you can talk about center cities versus suburban areas. So if I look up here, I can see that, we'll just take Birmingham, for example. Birmingham, right? Let's just take that as one example. If we look here, we've got some indications here in terms of the data. But just looking at the different polygons, which correspond to the neighborhoods, we can see that Center City, I've got a higher deprivation, and I've got some higher in terms of the least deprived in the suburban areas. So again, Center Manchester, yes, some areas that are higher, but if we zoom in, we can see a very different, well, somewhat of a different pattern, where if we look here, Center City, we've got some neighborhoods that fit the most deprived, but others, especially south of the city toward the airport, that actually are in the same metropolitan area, but they are actually the least deprived. In other words, the least poverty-stricken, the most wealthy, the most affluent. So isn't that interesting? And in terms of some of these neighborhoods, they're very close to other neighborhoods. So let's just take a closer look. And here's the airport that I was referring to earlier. Let's change the base map to an image base. Okay, and now just a few layers on, but let's also, how about let's set the transparency. And let's do the same thing for the least deprived. What I'm trying to get at here is I actually want to see if there's any way that I can determine what these neighborhoods look like. Okay, so now I've got one of the most deprived neighborhoods in here. Okay, can I determine anything from the housing type? We don't want to overgeneralize, right? We're going to zoom out a little bit, and maybe we'll change the base map to a Bing Maps aerial so we can actually see a little bit more of a detail here. Okay. Interesting. We've got some row houses here. Looks like maybe some duplexes and so on and so forth. Now let's zoom out a bit. Just across the freeway, and on the other side of the airport, we've got something different going on. So now let's, okay, so here we've got Trafford. We've got some data that we can analyze in more detail. The housing score, the health. See, there's a lot we can dig into here. What we're clicking on here are the different neighborhoods, and by doing so, we're bringing up the I part of GIS, the information part. But what about our question about looking at the actual, let me just turn this off for the moment. You know, even from a cursory look at these neighborhoods, I can see that this is pretty radically different from the other side of the freeway. Why is that? How did cities grow so that you've got these massive somewhat of a disparity between one side of the freeway and the other side of the freeway / airport? I can see right here that these are substantially larger houses. There's some larger lot sizes. Look, this one's got like a multi-car garage, and so it looks quite a bit different. Okay, well, let's just go ahead and turn the base map back to this light gray canvas again, because I want to take a look at some other areas of the country. So we've been taking a look at Manchester and just the disparities there in close proximity. What about in your community? Do you see anything like that? That's what a GIS will allow us to do, is to look at multiple different scales, as we're doing here, and pulling from different map services and different data sets that either you or an agency, an organization, has put up. Why did I say you? Well, because you also can create data. And now I'm going to turn the transparency back to opaque so I can see it again. And I'm also going to click on these other ones, so these other layers that I've got actually allow me to look at the small scale. Okay, interesting. Now let's take a look at London. Okay, so central London, what's our hypothesis? That maybe central London we've got a little bit of a higher instance of poverty, which is true in a lot of central cities. So it's, again, a very good point of discussion with your students about how cities evolved and changed over time. And then I can see over on the west side of London, I've got a whole bunch of neighborhoods that are in this least deprived category, which is very interesting indeed. Okay, so again, regionally, but by neighborhood, and also nationally, you can see these patterns. And again, we used ArcGIS Online, tapping into data, in this case from the National Statistics Agency, on a sub-country level. Now, one of the nice things about this data set is that it's showing us the opposite ends of the spectrum, right? We're not looking at every single neighborhood, although with a GIS, you can certainly pull in additional data and look at all neighborhoods in different places around the world, depending on the availability of the data. So thanks for being with me on this. I hope this piqued your interest in digging into ArcGIS Online and looking at population data. Thanks.